Hello, Get Fit. You've made it halfway through the challenge. This week, we are challenging you to get connected. To dive a bit deeper into what that looks like, I'm joined by Dr. Charles Farrow of Farrow Psychological Services. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Farrow. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. Well, let's see. I've been involved in psychology my entire adult life. Undergrad, UCLA, psychobiology, and then from there, graduate school. Got my doctorate in clinical psychology, and did some training as well in neuropsychology. And I have worked in hospital settings for decades and in private practice since 1992.
Wow, an extensive resume. So we are so excited to have you, and your expertise will hopefully shine through today. So let's just jump straight into the questions. To what extent can connection have an effect on our health and overall well-being?
That's a great question. And I gave this one a lot of thought because, in the second half of the 20th century, there was a lot of research on this from Bowlby to Rudder. And repeatedly, we saw that when you're not well attached to loved ones, you don't internalize that resource. So starting like even in infancy, if you have a baby who has a parent who's loving and is attentive to them, they will learn that the world is a trustworthy place, that others are trustworthy, and they eventually learn self-efficacy. We internalize those thoughts. They become our core beliefs, and those core beliefs can change over time. Especially if something traumatic or something significant happens. And I think that in the last year, we've all been through something significant with COVID-19, and the call for social distancing, I think, was an unfortunate choice of words. I would have preferred physical distancing. That has affected some people's perceptions of others and themselves. Because, for example, let's say you're an elderly person and people don't come by as much. That can make you feel a little bit more vulnerable than you did before, and your core beliefs might become vulnerable. So I think at any stage in development, those beliefs can be internalized negatively or positively. And when you're connected and there's a reliable connection there, then that bodes well for the thoughts you have about others and yourself.
And have you witnessed those effects on your patients since the beginning of the pandemic?
Sure. Even with the high functioning clients, I would say, they had good attachments before the pandemic, but this pandemic has caused a lot of people to feel some isolation and loneliness. And that can start to modify those core beliefs in a more negative way, a more painful way. This is, of course, more complicated with people who are struggling with some pre-existing emotional condition before the pandemic. So, for example, I can think of one person who just finished treating their social anxiety in March of 2020. And then they couldn't really go out and do all the things that they had been working to do. And that led to a brief depression after that. So I would say that, whether you're high functioning or in the middle, or even somebody who's struggling with something significant like schizophrenia, I would say that the same environmental pressures have affected us all. And I would say that, unfortunately, that's kind of changed the focus in therapy a bit.
Now, I'd love to know, do you think a lack of physical connectivity and physical, the enforcement of physical distancing, as you said, do you think that's changed the topics of conversation among folks? Has a lack of, human interaction, human touch led to a bit of a lack of authenticity?
Yeah, I would say so. Let's go back to the research I was alluding to before. If we start all the way back gosh, 1962 with Harry Harlow and the study with the rhesus monkeys. If we look at that study, he had baby rhesus monkeys and they were given surrogate artificial mothers. One of them was a wire mother and one of them was a cloth mother. And he had two conditions. In one condition, the food with the wire mother, and with the other condition, the food was with the cloth mother. And the little baby monkeys went to the cloth mother whether or not the food was there. They wanted to feel that touch. They wanted to feel that connection. And it was a really powerful thing to see them choose touch over food, over sustenance. And indeed, you can see this in our own human lives. When you start with a baby, if the parent puts them down for a minute, you'll see that they'll cling to their little blankie, they like that touch. Or if you look at a toddler at the playground, they'll come up to their mom or their dad and they'll hold their leg. And then when they go off to play with somebody, if something bad happens, like a kid throws sand at them, they'll come back and they'll grab their parent's leg, they'll touch and they'll refuel, and then they'll go back out. And you can see the effect of the importance of touch that we have at every stage of development. And it's very disheartening for anybody to be deprived of that. In every culture that we've had, the worst punishments are exile and solitary confinement, because it's in those situations that you're least likely to be able to touch with other people. And it's in those situations when there's no touch that you can convince yourself intellectually that everything's okay. But that doesn't connect with the emotional, physical experience that you're having. And that's what makes it inauthentic.
Now, I'd love to know maybe some tangible ways that you recommend folks achieving that connection with their loved ones as safely as possible.
Oh, of course. There's 6 questions that I think we can all ask ourselves every day. I recommend doing them in the morning, as you're getting ready for the day. What are you grateful for today? What are you checking? Who are you checking in on? Or who are you connecting with today? What unhelpful expectations are you going to let go of today? How are you going to get outside today? How are you going to move your body today? And last but not least, what beauty are you noticing or creating or cultivating or even just inviting in today?
Those are some really, really great questions to start the day off with. Centering yourself in a more grateful, more aware space can probably do wonders for folks.
Yeah, there's tons of research, for example, just with gratitude, on how it makes us more likely to choose the right choice ethically. It makes us more likely to advocate for others. It makes us more likely to assert our own needs. There's something beautiful about gratitude. Lots of research on that. And then I would say that for the social part, think first about the people that you're quarantined with. Reconnect with them. This is the perfect time to focus on them, right? And this can include making music or art together. This could include family yoga or exercise, maybe going out in the backyard and playing badminton together. An idea that I like, family book club. That's a really fun one. A virtual family trip and a board game night. That's just within your pod. And what's nice is all of those can involve touch in some way or another, right?
Right. I'd love for you to explain the virtual vacation of sorts.
Oh yeah. For example, you can find several videos on YouTube of all the different rides at Disney World. And you could sit down and say, okay, which rides are we going to go on? And then just watch these really high definition, beautiful video renditions of these rides. And it's kind of a fun little pretend getaway. Or you can do a video of a tour of the Redwood Forest and just, taking the beauty of that for a little while. So depending on what your family vacation would look like, you can do a virtual one. So that's kind of a fun idea. And then if you're outside the pod, don't forget about, like your older relatives or your old friends. This is a great time to call up, your friends that you haven't seen since your first year of college or something, and chat with them for 10 minutes. Video chat with relatives. Watch movies with others virtually, like the Netflix party or the Disney Plus group watch, right? Or host a virtual party. And here you can do something like Kahoot, where everyone is doing like a virtual Jeopardy, or Pictionary, other games that people have been playing in quarantine. But let's not forget about taking care of yourself. When you're by yourself, when you really are alone, it's a good time for meditation, and that can include some body scan meditation, a loving kindness meditation, just good old fashioned mindfulness to a sound. You hear sounds in your environment and you can be mindful of them. You can keep a gratitude journal. I really love that because that helps you connect with the wider world, all the things you're grateful for out there. Of course, you could create something artistic, or, write a piece of music. Walk around the block, go for a ride on your bike, try to find a non-peak hour to go to your local park or your trails near you. And, if all else fails, you can always do a virtual workout, right? A lot of people have been enjoying those this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think you threw out so many great options, from the virtual vacations to Cahoots game night. I think that sounds like so much fun, and it still engages those you love without putting them in harm's way. And so I really appreciate you touching on that. Also, mindfulness was our first week's challenge. So that's a perfect reminder
good.
Of how important mindfulness is. Now, I'd just love to ask, are there any other ways that the Get Fit participants can best support themselves right now and support their loved ones from afar throughout this challenge?
Sure. I think if you've got the time, and let's face it, if there's one thing that quarantine has given a lot of people is time. I think it's a good idea to have deeper conversations with the people that you are in the pod with. Going back to, if they're family members, talking about, where you lived, 10 years ago, talking about what was going on for them then. These are things that we rarely get a chance to really explore with each other, because the world gets busy,
Yeah.
They said that Shakespeare wrote one of his plays during the Black Plague. And I think that's a wonderful way to use your time. Paul McCartney wrote an album and recorded it during the quarantine this last year. He called it Rock Down. And those are wonderful things you can do, just doing something creative, even if it's, finger painting, something that you can get back to doing something tactile with. But I think, especially since today's connection discussion is so critical about the social aspect, I'm going to try to remind people, don't forget to, spend a little time listening to your loved ones, give them plenty of listening opportunities. It's amazing how, if you give people just a little bit of time to talk, how some important things might come up that never got discussed before the quarantine.
I love that. I think that is definitely something we can all take and apply to our own lives. And, I really appreciate you adding that into this conversation. Now, we're wrapping up. I'd love to know, do you have any last final words for the folks of Get Fit?
Sure, absolutely. Pay close attention to the things that have happened this past year that have touched your heart. If for example, you spent too many hours watching stressful news, what was it about those news stories that was stressful for you? How can you limit the time for those kind of activities? And also, how can you learn from that? What was it about that that was stressful for you? Can you explore that a little bit further? We want to get back to those core beliefs because those are the things that if they go the wrong direction, we could end up depressed or anxious. And I don't just mean going through the mood for the day. I mean, developing a disorder. And certainly a little bit of maintenance like that can go a long way.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, Dr. Farrow, so much for joining us today and spreading some of those great little nuggets. Sorry about him. Um, Thank you so much for spreading all those nice little nuggets. I think you've provided such great ways for folks to take a step back, listen to the people that they love, interact with people that they love in new ways, and incorporate some of the old normals into different, safer ways during these times. So thank you so much again, and
My
get
pleasure.
fit. Let's get connected this week.
All right. Thank you so much.